Electrostatics 3. This lecture covers the electrostatic energy of an arbitrary charge distribution, the energy of a spherical configuration of charge, and the energy contained in a capacitor. Next, it discusses the potential and field due to an electric dipole and establishes expressions for the same. We need to find out how much work would it take to assemble an entire collection of point charges. Imagine bringing in the charges one by one from far away. The first charge Q1 takes no work as there is no electric field. Now, let us bring in a charge Q2. The work done in bringing Q2 to the vicinity of Q1 is given by W2 is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q2 Q1 upon R12. Next, we bring in another charge Q3. Then W3 is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught Q3 within brackets Q1 upon R13 plus Q2 upon R23 and so on. Therefore, the total work done in assembling n charges is given by 1 upon 8 pi epsilon naught summation I going from 1 to n summation j going from 1 to n qi qj upon rij, where I is not equal to j, and 8 in the denominator occurs because we count each pair twice. So the resultant expression comes out to be half summation I going from 1 to n qi within brackets 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught summation j going from 1 to n qj rij I not equal to j. But the expression within the brackets is just the potential at the point in question due to the remaining charges. So we can write down this expression as half summation I going from 1 to n qi phi at ri. Hence, this is the amount of work done to assemble a configuration of point charges. This is also the amount of work done in dismantling the system. In the meantime, it represents the energy stored in the configuration, the potential energy, so to speak. Next, we discuss the energy of a continuous charge distribution. For a volume charge density, the work done is given by half integral rho phi dV. The corresponding integral for a line of charge is half integral lambda phi dl. For a surface charge density, it is half integral sigma phi dA. We use Gauss's law to write W is equal to epsilon naught by 2 integral divergence of E phi dV, since rho is epsilon naught divergence of E. Integration by parts gives us epsilon naught by 2 open brackets minus integral E dot grad phi dV plus closed integral E phi dA. You can recall that divergence of FA is given by F divergence of A plus A dot gradient of F. When we substitute this expression for divergence of FA, we can rewrite this using Gauss divergence theorem as closed integral FA over the surface dA which is enclosed by the volume V. On the right hand side, we make no changes. Now we rearrange the terms on the right hand side as follows. We retain integral F divergence of A dV on the right hand side as such, only we write it on the left hand side. So we are now transferring integral A dot gradient of F over dV to the left hand side, which we are actually writing on the right hand side. So the resultant expression that we get is integral F divergence of A dV is equal to minus integral A dot gradient of F dV plus closed integral FA dA. Therefore, the work done, now we are making the substitutions. Instead of A, we will write E. Instead of F, we will write phi. So directly we write down W is equal to epsilon naught by 2 close brackets minus integral E dot gradient of phi dV plus closed integral E phi dot dA close brackets. But E is equal to minus grad phi. Therefore, W is equal to epsilon naught by 2 open brackets integral E square dV plus closed integral E phi dot dA. If we integrate over all space, then W is equal to epsilon naught by 2 integral E square dV, because as we increase the volume and hence the surface area including the charge, the second integral decreases as E is proportional to 1 upon r square, phi is proportional to 1 upon r, dA is proportional to r square. So the product E phi dA is proportional to 1 upon r. As r tends to infinity, the surface integral tends to 0. Next, we discuss the electrostatic energy of assembling a uniformly charged solid sphere. Suppose that a sphere of radius capital R is assembled by bringing successively infinitesimally charged elements from infinity to assemble the distribution. Let small r be the radius of the sphere at any instant and let q be the charge in the sphere at that instant. Rho is the volume charge density, therefore q is equal to 4 pi by 3 r cubed rho. Suppose now an infinitesimal shell of charge of thickness dr is added to the sphere of radius r. The charge contained in the shell of thickness dr is given by dq equal to 4 pi r square dr rho. The work done in adding the charge dq to the sphere containing a charge q is given by dw equal to potential of the sphere of radius r into charge contained in the shell, which is given by 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught q by r dq, which is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught q by r 4 pi r square dr rho, which is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught 4 pi by 3 r cubed rho 1 upon r 4 pi r square dr rho. So we get 4 pi by 3 epsilon naught rho square r4 dr as the contribution of that shell. Now this is stored as potential energy of the system du. The total energy U required to assemble the sphere of charge of radius capital R is obtained by integrating this expression from r equal to 0 to r equal to capital R. Thus, U is equal to 4 pi by 3 epsilon naught rho square integral going from 0 to r to the power of 4 dr, which is equal to 4 pi by 3 epsilon naught rho to the power 2, the expression within the brackets being given by r to the power of 5 by 5, and the limits are from 0 to r. Once we substitute the limits, the resultant expression is 4 pi r rho square r to the power 5 upon 15 epsilon naught. If q is the total charge on the sphere, then q is given by 4 pi by 3 r cubed rho. So rho is equal to 3q upon 4 pi r cubed. So U is going to be equal to 4 pi by 15 3q upon 4 pi r cubed whole square r to the power 5 by epsilon naught, which is 3 by 5 q square upon 4 pi epsilon naught r. Next we find out the expression for the energy stored in a capacitor. A charged capacitor has stored in it an electrical potential energy U equal to the work done by an external agent as the capacitor is charged. This energy can be recovered if the capacitor is allowed to discharge. At a time t, the charge q has already been transferred from one plate to another. The potential difference between the plates is given by delta v prime equal to q prime by c. Now if an additional charge dq prime is transferred, the change in potential energy is du. So delta v is equal to delta u upon q naught. So du is equal to delta v prime dq prime, which is equal to q prime by c dq prime. This process is continued till the total charge is transferred. So u is equal to integral du, which is equal to integral going from 0 to q prime by c dq prime. So u is equal to half q square by c. Since q is equal to c delta v, u is equal to half c delta v whole square. The energy stored in the electric field present. The energy density is the energy stored per unit volume. The energy density here is represented by small u equal to capital U upon AD. For a parallel plate capacitor, small u is equal to half epsilon naught A upon D del V whole square by AD, which is equal to half epsilon naught del V by D whole square, which is equal to half epsilon naught E square, where E is the electric field. Since delta V represents the potential difference which exists between the capacitor plates, and d its separation. So delta V upon d represents the electric field which is present in the capacitor. If an electric field E exists at any point in empty space or a vacuum, we can think of that point as the site of stored energy in amount per unit volume of half epsilon naught E square. This image has been taken from the internet. It is a Python program which has resulted in the colored lines, or rather the color at the background, representing the strength of the electric field. The red dot represents the positive charge, the blue dot represents the negative charge, and the black lines represent the electric lines of force. This is a diagrammatic representation of the dipole which we will consider to determine the electric field and potential at the point P. Now we consider the dipole composed of two equal and opposite charges plus Q and minus Q lying along the z-axis. The separation between the charges is given by small t. The point of determination P makes an angle theta. The radius vector of the point of determination P makes an angle theta with the z-axis. Two equal charges of opposite sign separated by a distance t constitute an electric dipole. Let us take the 2 point charges plus q and minus q separated by a distance t. Let the charges lie on the z-axis. We pick the origin halfway between the charges. The electric potential due to the two charges is given by phi at xyz equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught open bracket q upon square root of x square plus phi square plus z minus d by 2 whole square plus minus q upon under root of x square plus y square plus z plus d by 2 whole square. If d is equal to 0, the two charges are on top of each other and the two potentials cancel out. There is no field then. Now consider the expression z minus d by 2 whole square. When we take the whole square, we will get z square minus zd plus d square by 4. Since d is very much less than z, we can consider this to be approximately equal to z square minus zd. Now x square plus y square plus z square is equal to r square. Therefore, x square plus y square plus z square minus zd will be equal to r square minus zd, which can be written as r square open bracket 1 minus zd upon r square. Therefore, 1 upon under root of x square plus y square plus z minus d by 2 whole square is equal to open brackets r square open brackets 1 minus zd by r square close bracket raised to the power minus half, which gives us 1 upon r open brackets 1 minus zd by r squared raised to the power minus half. Using binomial expansion and neglecting terms of an order higher than 2, we get 1 minus zd by r square raised to the power minus half to be equal to 1 plus half zd by r square. Next, consider z plus d by 2 whole square. When we expand this, we will get z square plus zd plus d square by 4. So this will approximately come out to be equal to z square plus zd because d is very much less than z. As before, x square plus y square plus z plus d by 2 whole square simply becomes r square plus zd. So we can substitute 1 upon under root of x square plus y square plus z plus d by 2 whole square as 1 upon r 1 plus zd by r square raised to the power minus half. Carrying out a binomial expansion as before and neglecting terms of an order higher than 2, we get 1 plus zd by r square raised to the power minus half as 1 minus half zd by r square. Therefore, the resultant expression for phi xyz comes out to be equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught into q open brackets 1 upon r 1 plus half zd upon r square minus 1 upon r open brackets 1 minus half zd upon r square close bracket close bracket. When we simplify this expression, we are left with just 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught z upon r cubed qd. We define QD as the dipole moment of the two charges. So P is equal to QD. Phi xyz now becomes 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught z upon r cubed P. If we look at the figure, we can see that cos theta is equal to z by r. Therefore, phi xyz is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught 1 upon r square P cos theta. The potential of a dipole therefore decreases as r square for a given direction from the axis. For a point charge, it goes as 1 upon r. The electric dipole moment is a vector P whose direction is along the dipole axis pointing from minus q to plus q and whose magnitude is P. So cos theta is equal to P dot unit vector r. R is the unit vector in the direction OP. So phi r is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught P dot unit vector r upon r square. If we substitute r vector instead of the unit vector, then in the denominator we will have to substitute an extra r. Therefore, phi r will become equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught P dot vector r upon r cubed. We now want to determine the electric field due to the dipole. The z component of the electric field is given by minus del phi by del z. Phi is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught z upon r cubed qt. So minus del phi by del z is going to be minus p upon 4 pi epsilon naught delta by delta z of z upon r cubed. Now r is equal to under root of x square plus y square plus z square. So delta r by delta z is going to be equal to 1 half x square plus y square plus z square raised to the power minus half into 2z. Z upon r is cos theta. Delta r by delta x is x upon r, delta r by delta y is y upon r, and delta r by delta z is z upon r, which is cos theta. So minus del phi by del z gives us p upon 4 pi epsilon naught 3z square upon r to the power 5 minus 1 upon r cubed on differentiation. We make a substitution for cos theta for z upon r. So we get p upon 4 pi epsilon naught 3 cos square theta by r cubed minus 1 upon r cubed. So Ex is equal to minus del phi by del x, which is equal to minus pz by 4 pi epsilon naught del by del x of 1 upon r cubed, which is equal to minus pz upon 4 pi epsilon naught minus 3x upon r to the power 5 within brackets, which is p upon 4 pi epsilon naught 3zx upon r to the power 5. Similarly, Ey will come out to be equal to p upon 4 pi epsilon naught 3yz upon r to the power 5. Ex and Ey are combined to give one component directed perpendicular to the z-axis. We call this the transverse component. So E perpendicular is equal to under root of Ex square plus Ey square, which is equal to p upon 4 pi epsilon naught 3z upon r to the power of 5 under root of x square plus y square. Now z upon r is equal to cos theta. Sin theta is equal to under root of 1 minus cos square theta. That is under root of 1 minus z square by r square. That is under root of r square minus z square upon r square, which is under root of x square plus y square plus z square minus z square upon r square, which is equal to under root of x square plus y square upon r square. Therefore, E perpendicular comes out to be equal to p upon 4 pi epsilon naught r cube 3 cos theta sin theta, where sin theta is given by under root of x square plus y square upon r square. The transverse component of E is in the xy plane and points directly away from the axis of the dipole. Therefore, the total field is E given by under root of Ez square plus E perpendicular square. Now Ez we recall is p upon 4 pi epsilon naught open brackets 3 cos square theta by r cubed minus 1 upon r cubed. E perpendicular is equal to p upon 4 pi epsilon naught 3 cos theta sin theta upon r cubed. We can take out common p upon 4 pi epsilon naught r cubed. Within the under root sign we will be left with 3 cos square theta minus 1 whole square plus 9 cos square theta sin square theta. Now 3 cos square theta minus 1 whole square on expansion gives 9 cos to the 4 theta minus 6 cos square theta plus 1. Substituting this in the expression for 3 cos square theta minus 1 whole square plus 9 cos square theta sin square theta, we get 9 cos square theta. Combining it with cos 4 theta and sin square theta, we get 9 cos square theta open brackets cos square theta plus sin square theta minus cos square theta plus 1. Cos square theta plus sin square theta is equal to 1. So we are left with 9 cos square theta minus 6 cos square theta plus 1. We finally get 3 cos square theta plus 1. So the expression for the resultant electric field becomes P upon 4 pi epsilon naught r cubed under root of 3 cos square theta plus 1. The figure on the next slide shows the field lines for pure dipole. We can compare it with the field lines for a physical dipole. To construct a pure dipole whose potential is given 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught p dot r upon r square, we need to let d approach 0. Unfortunately, we lose the dipole term too, unless simultaneously q tends to infinity. A physical dipole becomes a pure dipole in the artificial limit d tending to 0 and q tending to infinity, with the product qd equal to p held fixed. The dipole moment is determined by size, shape and geometry. Dipole moments are vectors. So for two dipoles P1 and P2, the resultant is P is equal to vector P1 plus vector P2. The diagram on the right hand side shows a dipole given by charges plus Q minus Q. The electric lines of force originate on the positive charge and end on the negative charge. Here we compare the fields due to a pure dipole and that due to a physical dipole. The pure dipole is just an ideation, doesn't exist and can't exist in real life. For a physical dipole, we can see that the field lines originate on the positive charge and end on the negative charge.